Welcome to Being Reintegrated. This is Tim Wright. So I'm talking again about Saint Martin, and the reason why is because through analysis of the actual material, I'm finding things that I've never been told before. I've had a lot of friends in the Martinist, Masonic, RER communities, and no one has really talked about these factors that I'm finding. So I'm talking about crocodile. I thought that it was just a stupid novel. It wasn't important. And then I found other things. So this isn't just to make my books sell, it's actually to have conversation and context behind these books. Now, Kim Publishing, talking about the books, Kim Publishing has now taken on an academic standard. So, justified text, lots and lots and lots of changes, typography wise. So, that'll be going as a project going forward, changing all the past materials into academically professional layout versions of the books. So the information in them is absolutely fine. It's just sometimes there's, a thing that pops out that says, I don't like that. I don't like the way this feels. I'm not with it. So I'm fixing that. And thank you for your patience and dealing with this whole new publishing skill and trade, because it's a trade that's been going on for thousands of years. And so it's not something that you can just haphazardly enter into. As any business owner would know about their trade, there's secrets of the business that absolutely are expected. So going forward, those will be fixed. I apologize for any typography issues that the book may have presented that made it, where it just wasn't appreciated or liked. But those will be fixed. So going forward, the books that I'm working on will have typography revisions. But that being said, that's a minor thing when it comes to the actual topic. So, as you probably know, the crocodile I redid because I didn't, trust the versions that were available. And there's some good intuition behind this. So if you just bear with me, I'll give you a reason why. The crocodile, I read comments, I read reviews, and it didn't seem like it was a version that could hold water. So I did my own version, through GPT, of course, translating it very meticulously, section by section. So not like loading the text into GPT and saying, translate everything. It's section by section and, going over it. So, after that was done, I went to an actual anonymous English translator and we reviewed the texts side by side and saw that the translation ability was at least adequate enough to express the actual English translation. In literary form, that's great. That's what we're looking for. So that's the kind of material that the AI is putting out just for translation. Now, the other stuff is that I've looked at other texts, Man, His Nature, and Ministry, and there's some big errors in that text. So what I did is I took the original penny version that we have in English and I checked it to see if linguistically it matches the original French, which I couldn't find. So I found the original French at Gallica. I made a transcribed version of it, and now we have the original French to translate into English. All of this sounds like extra work, but it is not. This is why I check and recheck these things to make sure that they're accurate. So I learned from an academic that Man, His Nature, and Ministry is written a certain way. Of course, I'll give lectures in the future about the way it's written, and I absolutely know it. So this isn't bloviating speculation that, oh, in the future you'll know. It's just because I got to make the book before I can actually make the statement. Because this research is also very competitive. So people will listen to you, pretend it's their idea, and go off the, deep end and redo what you were going to do. So it's somewhat of a hidden thing. Anyway, so Le Crocodile is a book that is mentioned by Nicole Jacques Lefebvre. In French, it's a big portion of her academic study, which is even recommended by Dominique Clarambeau as one of the best Saint-Martin studies out there. So, not only that, but the new edition of Man, His Nature, and Ministry will have that contextualization, including other authors that may have talked about Saint-Martin's book, and some scholarly clarifications from Lefebvre. So I aim to make an edition that's just as complete as any edition that we would want from a scholar, being a layperson researcher and publisher. I feel like it's my obligation to do those kind of works. But I'm rereading The Crocodile with this new perspective of Man, His Nature, and Ministry, and I gotta tell you, it's very, very cool. The fact that we have this, it really goes into some very deep mechanics. And you won't know it from just reading the book. You have to know it, then read the book, and you'll see it immediately. It's kind of like if you know how to spot a certain species of plant life. Like when I was at an international gathering, I'm sitting around and I'm thinking these are just bushes and trees. But the brother that I was with knew the species of trees and how they interacted so much. It was such a cool thing to hear. But to me, to my untrained eye, it just looked like trees and bushes. And, it was hot in Texas, and I didn't necessarily like the feeling of being out there in the heat in Texas. But seeing the nature being explained to me by this shamanic friend of mine really brings out a nuance that is not there on first sight. Well, the same with intellectual content. This content isn't just self-evident. You can't just read it and know what it means. You have to be instructed and initiated into the interpretation of it. Which I, am very dedicated to doing, and you'll see on my Being Reintegrated Patreon that I'll go through all of this. This is why I'm making episode notes, something like 80 episodes so far, including The Natural Table by Saint-Martin, Man, His Nature, and Ministry, The New Man. I'm going to do The Crocodile. So I aim to have a complete contextualization of Saint-Martin as a beginning spot so the initiate wisdom can step in and start doing what it does best, which is, articulate the functions of the soul and the material. I love that. That would be awesome. But we need to learn, the descending into the text as a mind would best descend into a text. So we need to do not typographical, but we need to do architectonics. We have to look at the actual structure of how it's written. We have to look at the form criticism of the text and if it's conveying in English properly what we need to see. Because that's another thing. French is a highly interpretive language. It's not like English. There isn't just one meaning. My friend, who is a professional translator and everybody loves his books, and I'll keep them anonymous for the sake of the anecdotal information, told me that it's not so much in the word that's used, it's in the rendering of the meaning that's conveyed when you render it. So this is what translators have to keep in mind, that it's not a one-for-one rendering. And if you don't know what he's talking about, you won't be able to render it properly. It'll look like gobbledygook. So with that being said, the new doctrine that I'm going to be presenting from Saint-Martin himself, and from a lot of different sources, so there'll be backed up information on why I'm talking this way, will have a new translation of all of Saint-Martin's works with footnotes and annotations, basically, that give reference to this doctrine. So we will go through each one of the French texts, which are not copyrighted. The French texts are not copyrighted. They are out of print, and they are out of copyright protection. So I'm going to retranslate them with this entire schema in mind. Now, you don't have to buy them. Absolutely don't have to buy them. But as an academically structured book with the proper typography and the proper taxonomy is what the word is, we will be able to finally penetrate into Saint-Martin, which I'm extremely satisfied to be able to do, because that was the mission. I read in Amadou's second volume of the Watkins manuscript, which we redid with English translation from a human translator. We redid the Watkins manuscript, volume 2, which is Mon Portrait. And what happens is, Amadou says, the original person who transcribed Mon Portrait, said that it is absolutely essential to understand Saint-Martin in this language. There's a big area of gap when it comes to understanding this actual Saint-Martinian doctrine. And, I aim to present that on my Patreon. I'll tell everybody the deets. But, you got to support the work. If you want these books, if you're interested in this topic, I will be providing contextualized interlinear French-English versions. And they will have complete doctrinal synchronicity and cohesiveness. You're not going to be in the dark anymore about what this stuff is. I've spent a decade or two trying to understand what all this was, because I started with the Libers like everyone did, and what happened is it was like Willermoes says in the book by Alice Jolie, it's a mystery of mysteriousness. You get into it and you basically see somebody throw a word like Yakaboma, and they make a state of your authority attributed to Yakaboma. And it sounds like it's something, pretty profound and mystical, but you're not really getting the initiatic impetus of the work. So it doesn't really do anything but make the person who's saying the fancy name look a little bit more special. Well, I'm aiming to end that. So we're going to actually know what we're talking about. We're going to know what this stuff is. Book by book, I'm going to re-go through the French, and we're going to have a new translation based on this new translator standard that will be cohesive with the doctrine of Saint-Martin. So I know that sounds a lot like promotion and bloviation, but it's absolutely true. I read a scholar, and I absolutely know how the books were written, how they were intended to be received, what their context is, how the French can best be rendered, and then, like I said, Kim Publishing now has typography standards that the books will be presented accurately, contextualized, and then further expanded in the Being Reintegrated podcast. I don't know if the Saint-Martin series is going to be available to the public. This video announcing it will be, but there's many lectures in that. My Patreon subscribers will get access to all those lectures. And then if you don't want to get a lecture subscription, you can buy the seminar. But I highly recommend to just You know, if you're going to be paying $50 a book for something that doesn't have context, that you come over to Being Reintegrated podcast, Patreon, whatever you want to call it, and you do the $7 subscription. Super low. I did it low on purpose so anybody could pretty much join. It's, you know, buy me a coffee basically, and I'll tell you all you need to know about the Saint Martin, RER, Willermoes, Masonry, Scottish Rite, the French Masonry. I mean, we've covered that entire area, including the Elucoan, the exorcistic degrees, the liturgical degrees, the theurgical degrees, and the revelations that should be coming to the mind that is prepared by all this work to have that understanding. So, you know, that's my time, and I just wanted to give a little bit of context with that for the Being Reintegrated and go forward for the years to come for the Saint Martin lectures. I'm so grateful for your patronage. Thanks for picking up the books, even in their rough form. They will be fixed throughout the years, but the information won't essentially be changed. It'll just be typography aligned, so the actual text will read as it was intended to be written. So I appreciate your patience with these revisions, these clarifications, and also thanks for being a member of the Patreon, because that really helps to keep making these videos in lickety split speed, you know, for all of the subscribers.